All right, good afternoon. We'll get started, and then afterwards, we will go with our guests who are dialing in from Haiti, and we will have the UN's humanitarian coordinator for Haiti, our friend Bruno Le Marquis, and he will be joined by the head of the IOM office in Haiti, and that is Giuseppe Loprete, and we will turn to them as soon as we're done here, and then Monica Grayley, the spokesperson for the PGA 76, will come and give her inaugural briefing. Today, as you will have seen, the World Meteorological Organization released its United in Science report, which says that COVID-19 did not slow the relentless advance of climate change. Instead, greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere continue to record levels, committing the planet to dangerous future warming. In a video message, the Secretary General said that the report shows how off course we are. Costly fires, floods, extreme weather events are increasing everywhere, he said, adding that these changes are just the beginning of worse to come unless there are immediate reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. The Secretary General urged countries to act now to prevent further irreversible damage and underscored that the COP26 in Glasgow must mark that turning point. His remarks are with you. And just to confirm that on Monday at 9 a.m., the Secretary General and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland, Boris Johnson, will hold an informal climate leaders roundtable on climate action. The roundtable will address the gaps that remain on the actions urgently needed from national governments, especially the G20, on mitigation, finance, and adaptation. We do expect a stakeout afterwards with the Secretary General and the Prime Minister. It'll be slightly before noon on Monday. We may not have a briefing on Monday, but we'll keep you posted. Turning to Yemen, Hans Grunberg, our new special envoy for Yemen, is in Riyadh to meet with senior Yemeni and Saudi officials and as well as other diplomats. Mr. Grunberg will meet with Yemeni President Abdrabbo Mansour Hadi, Prime Minister Abdul Malik, Foreign Minister bin Mubarak, House Speaker Sultan Barakani, and representatives of Yemeni political parties, among others. He will also meet with senior Saudi officials, ambassadors of the UN Security Council's permanent members to Yemen, and the U.S. Special Envoy to Yemen, Tim Lenderking. This is Mr. Grunberg's first visit to Riyadh since he took office as the UN Special Envoy. He is keen to engage with Yemeni and other key interlocutors on how to find a durable solution to the conflict and reach an inclusive political settlement that ends the war and meets the aspirations of all Yemeni people. Turning to Yemen, and just to give you an update on the dire humanitarian situation there, our humanitarian colleagues are warning of the conflict's growing toll on civilians. Fierce fighting in Marib has displaced more than 1,800 people just last week, bringing the total number of new displacements in the governorate to more than 27,000 men, women, and children since the beginning of 2021. Yemen's economy is on the verge of a complete collapse. The Yemeni rial is now trading in more than 1,100 to the dollar in government-controlled areas. That's a depreciation of more than 80% since the start of the crisis. This is contributing to surging food prices in a country where more than half of the population is facing acute food insecurity and 5 million people are close to starvation. With the generous support of donors, we, along with our partners, have been able to prevent famine and scale up assistance across Yemen. Today, the Yemeni humanitarian response plan is 54% funding, having received $2.1 billion of its $3.85 billion requirement. Next Wednesday, on the 22nd, there'll be a high-level humanitarian crisis, there will be a high-level event on the humanitarian crisis in Yemen, which will be convened on the margin of the General Assembly, hosted by Sweden, Switzerland, and the European Union. The event will be an important opportunity for the international community to show their solidarity with the people of Yemen, including through the announcement of contributions and of the humanitarian appeal. Moving on to Afghanistan, Filippo Grandi, the High Commissioner for Refugees, is now in Pakistan, where he's holding talks with the government officials and reviewing the refugee response in Pakistan. As you know, Grandi just concluded a 3-day visit to Afghanistan, During his visit in Kabul, he had meetings with the interim Afghan government, as well as some hundreds of the UN and NGO staff that have stayed on the ground to maintain and deliver humanitarian aid. For its part, the International Organization for Migration said today it continues to expand its relief operations across Afghanistan. This month, IOM has provided emergency shelter and relief items to more than 5,000 people in Kabul, Ghazni, and other districts. IOM has also resumed community development activities in 6 provinces, constructing school buildings and irrigation and other water supply systems to mitigate the effects of drought. We do hope to have Mr. Grandi here in person at some point on Monday to give you a chance to talk to him. Turning to Guinea, the head of the UN Office for West Africa and the Sahel, Mohamed Anadif, is participating in the 2nd Extraordinary Summit of ECOWAS, which is meant to address the situation in Guinea. That summit is taking place in Accra, in Ghana. In his remark, Mr. Anadif stressed that the UN remains concerned about the situation and will support any initiatives by ECOWAS to help Guinea regain a peaceful political and social framework, which will necessarily include a return to the constitutional order. He also conveyed the message that the Secretary General is very concerned about the repeated attempts at unconstitutional changes that are taking place in the West African sub-region. And turning to COVID, a couple of updates. UNICEF, friends across the street at the UN Children's Fund, announced today that 18 months into the pandemic, schools for nearly 77 million students in 6 countries continue to be almost completely closed, excuse me. According to UNICEF, Bangladesh, the Philippines, and Panama are among the countries that kept school closed the longest. In total, an estimated 131 million students in 11 countries have missed more than 3/4 of the in-person learning. Around 20% of countries worldwide continue to have schools fully or partially closed. To call attention to the 18 months of lost learning and to urge governments to reopen schools as soon as possible in a safe way, UNICEF and partners such as UNESCO and the World Bank are coordinating a, quote, freeze on content not education-related on their social media channels for 18 hours. The freeze started today at 9 a.m. Excuse me. A COVID update for you. Today, our colleagues in Thailand say that the UN system led by Gita Sabarawal, our UN coordinator, resident coordinator, is supporting authorities to boost vaccine confidence, especially in vulnerable groups, including migrants and the elderly. WHO is leading a campaign to counter vaccine hesitancy and misinformation, and has also helped to upgrade 2 labs, delivered more than 30,000 pieces of protective equipment, and launched multilingual hotlines to support 2.8 million migrants. We're also helping prisons address COVID with the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, delivering 1.5 million surgical masks, following reports that thousands of inmates were infected. UNICEF continues to deliver more than 400,000 relief supplies and thousands of learning kits to vulnerable families, and has also launched a new help center for COVID-affected children. 2 things I want to flag for you. One is that tomorrow is, just to remind you, that our guest will be Jean-Pierre Lacroix, who heads the UN Peacekeeping Department. And he will be here to brief you on peacekeeping operations ahead of the start of the new General Assembly session. And for those of you who live in the outer boroughs, at 7 p.m. on Saturday in Brooklyn, I think that's across the river for what I'm told, the Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, will launch In Their Hands, Women Taking Ownership of Peace, a photo exhibit, which is part of the Photoville Festival, Brooklyn Bridge Park, and that's on Pier 1 in Brooklyn. The exhibit, curated by the UN by the UN Department for Peace Operations, the UN Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, and UN Women, profiles 14 women peace activists through the lens of women photographers in peace operations settings in the Middle East, South America, and Africa. You can also see it online, and it's an easy ferry ride. Speaking of easy ferry rides, Mr. Bays.
So a couple of questions for you. I know we're going to be doing Haiti Humanitarian in a minute, but there's quite a lot going on politically with the Prime Minister sacking the Justice sacking the chief prosecutor and now replacing the justice minister. Given the backdrop of this, of the murder of the previous prime minister, and the fact that the chief prosecutor wanted to bring charges against the prime minister, how concerned is the Secretary General about what this will do to the already explosive political situation?
We're obviously very much aware of the situation and the changes, and I think it's important for all Haitian stakeholders, for political leaders, to continue to engage in a dialogue in order to guide the country through this period on the basis of consensus.
And one more for you, moving to Somalia, where the president has suspended the prime minister's powers to hire and fire people. Again, a very tricky political situation. This probably can't help. Again, what is the Secretary General's reaction?
Again, we're following this very closely, very much aware. I don't know if you saw, but James Swan did have some press remarks in which he commended President Laftagarin for efforts to mediate between President Farmajo and Prime Minister Hussein Roble. He sincerely hopes that his effort and those of other federal member state leaders and other mediators will help resolve the remaining differences. The need for dialogue, goodwill, and putting the needs of all Somalis first and foremost is especially important to allow Somalia to continue on its path of stability and reform. I very much hope to have a statement from the Secretary General this afternoon as well. Monsieur.
Thank you, Stéphane. Emmanuel Macron said that his country, France, killed ISIS leader in Sahara, Adnan Abu Walid al-Sahrawi. Any comment on this announcement from the Secretary General?
No, I do not have a comment on this.
Question. May I ask you if there is any update regarding Mr. de Mistura appointment as special envoy to Western Sahara?
No, the great personal envoy speculation process is continuing, and I'm in all seriousness. Obviously, as you know, we do not comment on what rumors and unconfirmed press reports. When there is an announcement to be made, we will make it when it's well done and baked and ready to come out of the oven. Well baked. It is well baked, huh? That's almost funny. Yes, sir.
For the General Assembly Hall to all the participants, to all people who goes into the General Assembly Hall during a high-level week to be vaccinated. Is it final, or can we hope that something will change? And about what vaccines we are talking about? Only the ones that are certified here in the US?
Sure. Yes, that is an issue that there's been a lot of discussion about recently. I mean, some of these, I would also encourage you to ask these questions of my colleague who speaks for the President of the General Assembly. I can only speak on behalf of the Secretary General, who, as a reminder, I think has been extremely cautious and careful since the start of the pandemic to avoid, to keep the community safe. Regarding this General Assembly, as we've said, we've taken a number of mitigation measures from the Secretariat point of view: smaller footprint, mandatory mask wearing, mandatory vaccination for staff, etc., and also limiting the delegation size to 1+3 in the GA hall to ensure that the high-level meeting is as safe as possible. As you may recall, there was a pilot project under the previous president of the General Assembly for 75, which basically said that by swiping a badge to enter the GA hall, delegates attest that they are fully vaccinated, that they have not tested positive for COVID-19 in the last 10 days, and have no symptoms. We're working with the president of the General Assembly 76 on continuing this honor system in an appropriate and acceptable way for all concerned. And obviously, I think it bears repeating that we are cooperating, we have cooperated with the host country and the host city on these matters, and will continue to be discussing these matters with them. We fully expect to find appropriate solutions consistent with our respective requirements and status. Benno.
Thank you. I'm not to full speed already about the meeting on Monday, the roundtable. Do I understand it correctly that it's then behind the doors when you say there's a stakeout afterwards?
Yes, it's done. It's done behind. It's done behind. It's done. Sorry, let's try it again. It is a closed. It is closed door meeting, which, you know, we feel will allow for a very frank exchange of views, as we say in the diplomatic world, on what needs to be done. We will be issuing a chair's summary, which will state what countries need to do and to ensure success at Glasgow. We do expect to release the participants' lists probably on Sunday night, which it's still being worked out. It'll be a fairly representative palette of member states from the G20, small islands, African countries. Some will be here in person, and others will be taking part virtually.
And do
it'll be behind the closed doors of the Trusteeship Council.
Okay. And about other meetings aside from the GA itself?
There's a press kit which I think you should have all received, and if not, we'll make sure you send it with that outlines all of the meetings. We're also feverishly working on the week ahead, which hopefully we'll put out later today.
Okay. I think I missed that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll come back to you in a second. Stefano.
Thank you, Stéphane. What is the reaction of the Secretary General on that new pact that was unveiled between UK, Australia, and United States? Military pact, nuclear pact.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't have language on that for the time being. But as soon as I have something, I will be able to share with you.
Is he concerned?
As I said, I'm waiting for some language on that. Iftikhar?
Thank you, Steph. Do you have any readout on the important meeting SRG Deborah Lyons had with Afghanistan's Interior Minister Sirajuddin Haqqani? Do you have? How did it go from the point of view of United Nations?
These are continuing dialogues that we are having with Afghan with the Taliban in Kabul. Today, she also met with, along with our head of security, Gilles Michaud, met with the intelligence chief, Abdul Haq Wasik, about securing the staff of UN personnel, the issues relating to Islamic State, and the importance of humanitarian assistance to reach those Afghans who need help. I'm going to come back. Yeah, go ahead.
I said any reaction from SRG Deborah Lyons?
Well, I mean, you know, these it's not about having a reaction. These are ongoing dialogues with the Taliban that we're having in Kabul to ensure that humanitarian aid can continue to be delivered in an independent and impartial manner. Also to underscore the need to respect human rights, including, of course, the rights of women and girls, to ensure the safety of UN personnel, to talk about issues of access. It's an ongoing discussion. Pam.
Thank you, Steph. Two quick questions. One is to follow up on the vaccination question. With this new New York City requirement that diplomats be vaccinated, you read the comment about what the Secretariat is requiring. There's been some questions, especially from Russia, about whether there should be an emergency session on the requirement itself. But can you say where the Secretary General stands? The new PGA has embraced the requirement. can you say if the Secretary General does? And will it continue to be on an honor system, as you say, or is there also a consideration of some kind of proof? And then I have one more
what I said earlier, Pam, is that I did flag that there was the honor system under the 75th session. We are under discussions with PGA 76 on continuing the practice in a way that's appropriate and acceptable for all concerned. On the issue of, there are issues that member states will have to solve, and I think it bears repeating for, I don't know how many times, that, on the Secretary General does not have the authority to impose what people have been talking about. He has authority over the staff, but obviously the member states will have to come to a resolution amongst themselves. And your other question?
All right. Yes, and the other question is on BTS on Monday. Do you expect, do you know the timing on that, on the SDG meeting?
SDG moment
and how will it be broadcast? Thanks.
The SDG moment will start at about 8 o'clock. Again, a lot of those details are going to be shared with you very quickly. And it'll be on the UN webcast, and I think broadcasters can take the feed as per usual practice. At least that's what I'm told.
And that's including the recorded video that they have.
I believe so. I mean, we can have an offline discussion on copyrights if there's an issue. Mr. Roth, yes, including the video, I'm told. And Mr. Roth, and then Mr. Gladstone.
Thank you, Steph. On this Day of Atonement, I know you and the Secretary General have nothing to atone for, but except for the Mets organization. Moving back to that topic.
I was there last night. It was a sad night. There's a lot of atoning that needs to be done at Citi Field. Anyway, go ahead.
It was not in the cards. But seriously, the UNGA and the vaccination. I know it's a tricky situation. You've got language there. We would rather ask you at the moment than pressure Monica because she's just starting, but you never know. We can try her. And the mayor of New York praised the Secretary General, and you are a lot of days the face of the UN. And you mentioned discussions are still going on. So several questions. How do you know whether a head of state of government who does not prove vaccination will be allowed? Will that happen? Can that still happen? What kind of proof, how are you going to shut them down on this honor system?
We had an honor system for the last session. We're working with the sitting President of General Assembly to continue that honor system in a way that is acceptable for all. There are issues in this building that need to be dealt with by member states and those that are under the purview of the Secretary General. The Secretary General's authority is limited. So we will work with member states we will work with member states in finding a way forward. And I do apologize for the diplomatic language, but the bandwidth is rather narrow.
If someone tests positive for COVID sometime during the GA, who will tell you we had this issue? I remember last year where there were one or two delegation people.
We would.
And how will you stop them from coming in the building?
We would expect. Anyone who comes into this building who then subsequently tests positive to report it not only to their local health authorities, but also to us so we can take the necessary mitigation measures. That's something that I think people need to do wherever they are, whether they're the UN or in anywhere they go where they see other people, and whether these people are staff members, journalists, delegates. I think that, to me, that's common sense responsibility towards your community.
And do you have a pithy comment regarding the fact that the United States sent a letter, which we've discussed, about do not create a super spreader event, don't come, in other words, and all these people are still coming?
No. Let's
Not
go.
enough,
Let's.
but
Is that
okay.
pithy enough? We'll go to Rick, and then we'll go back to the room.
Hi, thank you. Richard asked questions in a blunter way than I was going to, but I have a couple of follow-ups.
Yeah.
When you say that you're looking for an accommodation in a way that is acceptable to all, who is all? Does that include the city of New York?
It includes all concerned. Obviously, it includes all concerned. Different entities here have different. No, I know what you mean. Different entities have different responsibilities and different status. There is a host country agreement. We are trying to work on a solution that would be acceptable to all concerned, consistent with our respective requirements and status.
So what happens on Monday or Tuesday, rather, or whatever, when if you haven't reached an accommodation acceptable to all concerned? What's going to happen? Some leaders won't be allowed to come into the GA hall?
We are not, we're Thursday. I have no doubt that, as always in the United Nations, we find a solution, appropriate solution, acceptable to all in time. Mr. Bays.
So it is another COVID-19 question, but slightly different one. You are telling us, and I'm sorry, I haven't been here for some time, but that the meeting on Monday, the climate meeting, is now a hybrid meeting. I earlier had heard that the only people in person would be the Secretary General and the UK Prime Minister. I also heard there was a letter from the New York City saying no side events in the whole of UNGA. And I think this podium, you said everything other than the GA, the actual high-level session of the GA would be virtual. It seems Monday is not virtual anymore.
I will give you a breakdown, hopefully very soon, on in person, not in hybrid. Who's in person, who's in the room, and who is not. I think when we talk about side events, these are side events often organized either by groups of member states or agencies for whatever.
No, but I think your own words were at one point.
No,
the only thing in
trust
person
me,
would be the actual General Assembly session.
There's my own words and there's reality. Okay. How about that? There are issues, global issues, that are pressing, that are critical to the well-being of the planet and the well-being of humanity. I believe climate is clearly one of them, and that's why we're having this meeting.
So Monday is not a side meeting, it's an essential meeting, I get that. Are there any other essential meetings in addition to the climate and the General Assembly, or are all others considered virtual and side events?
We're still working on that list.
Thank you.
Sorry? Yeah, please.
Sorry, just another one on COVID-19.
Why not?
Given the SG's probably do you know how many in-person meetings he'll be doing, like bilats, next week?
Yeah, we have about in person. I expect over 105, 110 heads of government, heads of states, vice presidents, senior officials. Secretary General will have quite a large number of bilaterals if they were requested by visiting heads of delegations.
So will he be wearing a mask during those, or will he be requesting vaccination status?
He will be. I think if you see him in most of his meetings, he will be wearing the masks.
And he won't. He can't request.
I think we all have faith in responsible human behavior. James, then we'll go back to the screen.
Just to follow up on that, if he's doing 105 potentially in-person bilats, how many virtual bilats is he doing? Because member states were encouraged not to come here, and so he can't disadvantage the countries that actually have not come here, surely.
Surely, but the point is, he is available 365 days a year to have virtual bilaterals, and he has those often. So I'll have to check if he's having any virtual bilaterals. But I mean, by definition, a virtual bilateral can be had at any point, and he often has bilateral meetings with people who have things to say to him, or if he has things to say to people. Mr. Baradan, then we'll go back to Rick, and then we'll go to our guests, I think.
Yes, thank you, Steph. Follow up on the vaccines. So what are the consequences for the Secretary General if he makes it a mandate for his own or the UN employees to get vaccinations? Well, I don't understand this, because you said for a long time that the UN will abide by what the city of New York, what the state of New York, what the United States has been saying or say, and it seems you've come to a point that you are resisting telling us why the SG is rejecting that notion.
The Secretary General is not rejecting anything. The Secretary General has mandated that all public-facing staff, at this point, that all public-facing staff be vaccinated. We have been guided, we have heard the requirements of various entities, and we're always trying to find a solution that is appropriate, consistent with everybody's respective requirements and status. And I think when it comes to this building, when it comes to staff, in areas within his direct responsibility, the Secretary General has been extremely careful. That's my opinion anyway. Mr. Gladstone. Sorry, go ahead, Ali.
Let me, sorry, I have to follow up on this. Of the 110 head of state and government,
or so. Ali, this is an approximate number, just so everybody's clear. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, is he going to shake hands with? Is he going to shake hands with them?
I think he will greet them in the appropriate COVID manner, as you will see it from all the photo ops. Okay, Mr. Gladstone, and
my question,
yes, go ahead.
My question is on Lebanon. And I'm sorry, you're getting irritated.
That's all right.
I understand
that's
why.
okay. Go ahead. It's just the sound's very loud in here.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ali.
Yeah. So, on Lebanon, today a non-state actor sponsored a convoy of oil to the country from Syria. Do you have any comment on that? Thank you.
No particular comment on that today. Mr. Gladstone.
Okay, sorry. I'll ask my last question on our favorite subject of the day. On the protocols for preventing a super spreader event at the United Nations General Assembly, is there a plan in place for how to notify anyone who attends the General Assembly if they've been in contact with someone who is subsequently determined to have been infected?
Yes, our medical service, once they are notified, have protocols in place that were in place last year. They've been in place really throughout the pandemic on how to do contact tracing. But that also, of course, also involves the need for everyone who is physically in this building, whatever their status or category is, to be responsible and report any COVID infections.
And I'm sorry, I neglected to ask you. You mentioned yesterday that it's possible that there will be a vaccination station. Maybe it's outside now. I'm not at the UN.
Yes,
at the moment. A vaccination station outside the GA, outside the UN headquarters.
Yeah. The city of New York has graciously decided to set that up, and we would encourage any of you who are not vaccinated to use that service.
But will that constitute a vaccination? I mean, the vaccines don't take effect right away. Sometimes, I mean, it takes a matter of 10 days.
I think
to 2
it's,
weeks.
yeah, it's two separate issues. The issues of access and vaccine regulation within the UN, I think we've beaten that horse quite enough for today. That doesn't stop people who need to be vaccinated, who haven't been able to get vaccinated at home, to be vaccinated. Okay.
So if you get vaccinated at the UN station outside and you get your vaccine certificate, you'll be allowed inside the UN.
But I think that, again, Rick, it's two separate things. It's a vaccination station. The issue of what is required of delegates to come in is a different issue, and that's still being worked out.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry for belaboring this.
No, and I apologize for my state of high irritation. But I know my next guests, Bruno Le Marquis and Giuseppe Loprete, will lower my level. So, Bruno, are you on?